I used to believe Jake was the kind of man who'd never lie to me. For 3 years, we built something I thought was solid. Weekend hikes, Sunday pancakes, silly little traditions that made our relationship feel warm, almost cinematic. He remembered my coffee order without fail. He'd kiss my forehead before leaving for work. It was the kind of love you quietly thank the universe for. But lately there was this shift. It started small. His texts became shorter. Our conversations felt filtered. When I'd ask about his day, he'd hesitate, just for a second, before replying like everything was fine. And maybe it was. Maybe it was just work stress. But something about the way he smiled with his phone in hand, only to lock it when I walked into the room, made my chest tighten. I told myself not to spiral. We all go through phases. People get tired. But the distance between us began to feel like a hallway stretching longer every day. I could hear echoes, but I couldn't reach him. He'd come home late, say he stayed behind to finish a design project. I wanted to believe him. I needed to. I spoke to Claire about it. She's been my best friend since college, the kind of person who knows when something's off even before I say it. She reassured me, said Jake was probably just under pressure. Guys suck at balancing stress. She laughed. Don't overthink it. I nodded, trying to swallow the unease. Still, it lingered. One night, I was doing laundry and found a movie stub in his jeans pocket. A film we never watched together. It was from a Thursday night, the same night he said he worked late. I wanted to ask him right then, but I didn't. I waited. I didn't want to seem paranoid. Instead, I set it aside, tucked it into my notebook. A piece of evidence I wasn't sure I needed yet. 2 days later, he brought home my favorite takeout. Kissed my cheek, laughed at my jokes like everything was fine. And maybe it was. But that night, as he showered, I saw a name flash across his phone screen. I didn't recognize it. Just 3 words under it. Miss you too. I stood there, staring, not breathing. My fingers trembled, but I didn't open it. I placed it back exactly where it was. I wasn't ready to know. Not yet. Instead, I crawled into bed next to him, heart hammering, and whispered, "Good night." He murmured, "Love you." And I stayed silent. I started noticing everything after that night. The way Jake angled his phone screen away when I sat beside him. How he laughed a little too loudly at texts he never explained. How he began using cologne on days he said he was working from home. It wasn't one big thing. It was 100 small shifts that stacked on top of each other until I couldn't ignore them. I mentioned it again to Claire. She stirred her coffee and smiled like I was being dramatic. "You've been overthinking lately. Maybe he's planning something. An anniversary thing? Guys are clumsy with surprises." She said it so casually. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe something good was behind all this. But I couldn't sleep. I started checking his location, not obsessively, just when the lies didn't line up. I installed a tracking app on his phone one afternoon when he was in the shower. It wasn't who I was, but I had to know. The not knowing was louder than any guilt I felt. That following Thursday, Jake said he had a late client meeting at his office. Around 9 p.m., I checked. His location was still pinned at his workplace. I grabbed my keys and drove there. The lot was mostly empty. His car wasn't parked in its usual spot. The building looked dark. I waited. At 9:26, I saw him. He walked out with someone. A woman, maybe a little shorter than me. Long, dark hair. They were laughing, standing too close. She touched his arm like she'd done it before. He didn't pull away. They stood there, for what felt like forever. Then they got into separate cars. No kiss, no hug. But something passed between them. A familiarity I couldn't explain. I took a photo from my car. My hands shook the whole time. I felt sick. I didn't confront him. I couldn't. Not without knowing for sure. I needed to be absolutely certain before I tore open our life. Claire came over the next morning. I told her everything. She looked at the photo and said, "It could be anything. A coworker, a client. Don't jump to conclusions, Em." Her voice was calm, measured. It made me feel foolish, like I was building castles out of shadows. I nodded, even though every part of me was screaming. That weekend, I barely spoke to Jake. He didn't seem to notice. Or maybe he did, and chose not to say anything. On Sunday night, he came home with sunflowers. He knew I loved them, said they reminded him of me, bright, warm, loyal. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw them in his face. Instead, I smiled. I took them from his hand and thanked him. That night, while he cooked pasta, I opened his laptop. It was risky. He never let it out of his sight, but he'd left it in the living room for once. No passwords, no firewalls, just open chats. There were no messages from her, no emails, no signs. I felt both relieved and defeated. What if Claire was right? But then I saw it. A calendar invite. Dinner, 7:30 p.m., Claire. It was set for the same night I'd followed him. No last names, just that. My stomach flipped. I checked again. It was Claire's number under that strange name on his phone. I closed the laptop and walked away like nothing happened. And I realized I wasn't just looking at the wrong suspect. I'd been confiding in her the entire time. Didn't cry. Not at first. I just sat there staring at nothing, the silence louder than my thoughts. Claire. It had been her all along. The calm voice of reason. The shoulder I leaned on. I had handed her my pain, and she carried it like it was nothing, all while sneaking behind my back with the man I loved. I needed to see more. I wasn't going to accuse them based on a calendar invite. I needed to catch them. No doubts, no space for denial. So I waited. I played the part, smiled when Jake looked at me, laughed when he joked, kissed him when he leaned in, and when I told him I was going to visit my sister for the weekend, he didn't blink. He said, "Have fun. I'll miss you." The lie slid off his tongue like he'd said it 1,000 times. I didn't go to my sister's. I stayed in town, booked a room at a cheap hotel, parked around the corner from our apartment, and waited. The next night, he left the house at 6:45, dressed better than usual. I followed. Quiet. Far enough behind not to be noticed. He parked near a small Italian place we used to go to when we first started dating. Nostalgic, romantic. I watched from across the street. She arrived at 7:10. Claire. I should have felt rage, but all I felt was numb. The kind that seeps into your bones and makes you forget how to breathe. They hugged, sat across from each other, talked like they hadn't a care in the world. She touched his hand across the table. He didn't move away. I took a video this time. I wanted proof that even they couldn't twist. When I got back to the hotel, I didn't sleep. I wrote a letter instead. Not for her. For him. It wasn't angry. It wasn't cruel. It was honest. I told him I knew. I told him I'd seen them. I told him I hoped they'd be happy, because if they weren't, then it was all for nothing. Folded it and slid it into the drawer beside our bed the next morning while he was still asleep. Then I made breakfast like I always did. He kissed my cheek on his way out. Said he had errands. I smiled. Claire texted later that afternoon. "Thinking of you. Call me if you need anything." I didn't reply. That night, I waited for Jake. At the dining table, candlelight, calm music. My hands didn't shake. When he walked in, he looked surprised. I said, "I know where you were yesterday." His face changed, just for a moment. Then he tried to recover. I didn't give him the chance. You don't need to explain, I said. I already saw it. Both of you. He opened his mouth, closed it, looked down. I stood, walked to the bedroom, pulled the letter from the drawer, and handed it to him. I wrote everything I needed to say. Then I walked out of the room, leaving him standing in the doorway, holding the truth in his hands. He didn't say a word as I walked past him. I heard the paper tremble in his hands. For a long time, there was just silence between us. Then, finally, he followed me into the living room. "It wasn't what you think," he said. I looked at him and waited. No emotion, no reaction, just listening. "She was helping me," he said. "I've been confused. I didn't want to burden you." I almost laughed. "So instead you took that burden to my best friend?" He flinched. "It wasn't like that." I nodded slowly. "Okay, then tell me what it was." He hesitated. "We started talking when you and I were drifting. I didn't plan it. She just listened. I didn't realize it was crossing a line until it already had. And you didn't stop it." He didn't answer. The silence filled in everything he refused to admit. There were no more questions left in me, no more pleading, no yelling, no crying. I had reached the end of the line. What hurt most wasn't just that he lied or that she betrayed me. It was that I had handed them both the pieces of my heart, and they broke them while smiling at me. I called Claire. She didn't pick up the first time. The second time, she answered, her voice soft. "Hey, is everything okay?" I didn't say anything for a moment. "You've been quiet," she added. "I was worried about you." I kept my voice steady. "I know." Silence. "You know what? I know about you and Jake." She exhaled like she'd been holding it for hours. "Emily?"